Hey guys, what's up? It is week 398. I got like 17, 18 movies to talk about, a decent size update. Let's hop right into this. The first one up is from Cauldron Films, made in 1990, released in 1991 widely, I believe. And this is The Last Match, and this is directed by Fabrizio De Angelis. And he was mostly a producer. His name was on a lot of cheapy movies. I think he actually produced the Killer Crocodile movies, if I'm not mistaken, and actually directed one. And he also directed a Ratman, which Cauldron Films put out. Hopefully I'm getting those Killer Crocodile movies. It's been a while since I watched those. But he also directed a Ratman, which is an absolutely ridiculous movie that Cauldron Films put out with David Warbeck. Now, this is The Last Match, and I had heard about this one for years. It's essentially football players kind of go on a let's get hairy on common valor kind of mission here in an unnamed third world country. This famous quarterback's daughter basically gets somebody puts drugs in her bag, and she gets arrested, and she's looking to 5 to 10 years in prison. This doesn't sit well with a quarterback, especially when he believes his daughter's innocent, and he gets reassured by her boyfriend. So he kind of goes down to the country and tries to make things work himself. His coach is Ernest Borgnine, the legendary great actor. He tries to work with a lawyer and Martin Balsam, another legendary actor, and talk to the warden, played by Henry Silva. So we have a bunch of people in here. There's also the guy the American Embassy guy, and Charles Napier. So we have a lovely cast in here. Probably, let's say, better than the film deserves, I would say. But then at the time, a lot of these guys were doing the movie. So essentially, the quarterback exhausts all means, and he decides that he's going to break his daughter out of prison with the help of a prison guard who is asking for something in return. So he doesn't have soldiers. He doesn't have, the American government to help him. Who's he have? He has his teammates. He has his buddies. He has his players and his football buddies, and they're going to come help him do the last match, right? So essentially, the first couple acts of this film are, the arrest, the red tape, all that kind of shit like that. And then it eventually builds up to the final act where you got Ernest Borgnine coaching them how to take down the enemy, and everybody runs in full football regalia, machine guns, helmets. The last act is absolutely bonkers, ridiculous. If you ever wanted to see football players with machine guns shooting at unknown, unspecified third world country characters, then The Last Match is for you. Henry Silva is a good villain. He always does a good job. I love Ernest Borgnine. God bless Borgnine. He's solid in this. He's fun in this. He's got his little hat on. I think he's wearing like a floral shirt. And Balsam does well too. And Napier. All the character actors do well. The lead guy's okay. He's not. He's with some heavyweights in there. He's a decent performance. The daughter's fine. It's not as gratuitously sleazy as one would expect. This could have got really dark and really nasty. It's fairly soft. The action's decent. Overall, The Last Match is all right. What I really enjoyed about this release in particular, besides it looked great and sounded great, and it's a movie that I could check off the old list, is the special features. So here we go. Blown Away, an interview with special effects artist Roberto Ricci. American actors in declining Italian cinema. Mini doc by Eurocrime director Mike Malloy. This one I understand I don't want to say understand. Is speaks to me. All right. This documentary by Mike Malloy is definitely something that I'm interested in. I love classic actors. I love character actors. So basically, he paints the picture of Italy during this time and when actors were getting in, like Clint Eastwood, and he talks about Lee Van Cleef kind of on his going over to Italy and Clint Eastwood was going in on the rise and got in when the getting was good, while Lee Van Cleef stayed along, and he kind of wrote out, the whole thing. And he talks about these actors. He mentions 4 or 5 actors and goes through their career and how they stayed on and what they contributed and all that kind of stuff like that. From Borgnine to He does Henry Silva a little bit. Does some other actors that actually aren't in the movie. All interesting, entertaining stuff. And anytime you can get a glimpse at what the Italian film industry was at that time, they always talk about the televisions coming in and kind of wiping out the cinema for Italian films. But the Italian cinema market really created the careers of a lot of American actors and elongated a lot of the careers of American actors. So that's a nice little interesting mini doc by Mike Malloy. Then we also have Understanding the Cobra, a video essay by Italian film expert Eugenio Ercolani, and commentary by Italian exploitation movie critic Michael A. Martinez. So yeah, if you ever wanted to watch a bunch of classic actors, this is region free as well. Kind of do slum it, I guess is what you would say, but they're still solid. It's a ridiculous concept, and it's even a more ridiculous film. Overall, The Last Match is decent. It's funny. It's watch it with a couple friends and have a good time. Check it out. The next one here is from Radiance Films, and this is Tattooed Life by Seijun Suzuki, classic Japanese director. I've reviewed a handful of his films. He had that really interesting trilogy in the 80s with Kajiria and what was it? Is it Kojiria O? And one from 80 and 81, and he also did a bunch of like classic old kind of Japanese films. This one's actually a Nakatsu film, which is great. I love those, and Nakatsu is one of the major production companies in Japan, along with Toei and Toho and Dai. I can't ever say that correctly, but there was like 6 or 7. So A Tattooed Life. This is a relatively short kind of runtime, and it does follow a lot of the like kind of tropes of the storyline. We have a young Yakuza who is told to murder this other Yakuza boss, and so he does it. And for his reward, they are planning on killing him. He has a young brother as well that he takes care of. He kind of defends himself, and his young brother jumps in and kills this other Yakuza boss. That puts them on the run, and they want to kind of go to kind of an isolated place where no one's going to find them, live kind of a wholesome kind of life. So they end up going to this like mining town where they don't think there'll be a criminal element, but of course there's going to be a lot of politics and corruption, and even then the Yakuza has its kind of fingers dipped in here, a different kind of criminal element. And what happens is they kind of do fall in love. They have their relationships. They earn the trust of the fellow workers and become, especially our lead here, becomes kind of a very popular character. While his little brother still does struggle a little bit. It's kind of an outcast. A couple character actors you will recognize. Basically the foreman of the mine is great. It's beautifully shot, beautifully well done. The first 2 acts of the film are very straightforward, very practically made, well made, but practically made, well shot. And as the story unfolds, we are, of course, going to get this kind of conflict amongst all the characters. And it starts to get a little bit more surreal as characters die and as the last stand happens. And it's absolutely a beautiful moment. We have this great moment where this great kind of filmmaking technique where I don't even know what you'd call it, but lighting technique, I guess you'd say. But the lightning strikes, and this character has just died, and it all goes red, and you're like, oh, that's just when the movie kind of shifts, and we are always planning to this big kind of battle at the end. A lot of Yakuza films are like that. Gambling Boss was one that was it Gambling Boss, which Radiance Films put out, where we have this kind of slow, political amongst the politics amongst the Yakuza and drama-filled stuff, and the very ending is this big, elaborate, kind of amazing fight scene. And in the Yakuza films or the samurai films and Japanese films in general, one slice and you're done. Typically, it's very fast. It's very so much different from the Hong Kong films of the time, which I'm so used to watching too, because the kung fu in those is almost so over the top and different. This one is just so fast and brutal. And the end fight scene is wonderful when he faces off against the main Yakuza boss. We have shots from underneath them. They turn the floor kind of invisible. In 1965, I'm like, this is way ahead of its time. We have like kind of doors falling over, lights going off, and bullets are the only thing keeping the whole scene lit. It's just a gorgeous final act to this movie. Overall, it's a really solid film. But that final act really pushes it above. It's kind of contemporary films in this. As far as the special features are concerned, we have audio commentary by William Carroll, author of Seijun Suzuki and Post-War Cinema. It's very interesting. He talks about this being with a double feature with a much longer film. He talks about Seijun Suzuki's theatrical output at the time and how he basically had to make all these movies rapid fire, that Nakatsu was basically putting out 104 movies a year because they needed 2 movies, double features each week for the theater. He talks about the average runtime, all sorts of stuff like that. Talks about the cast and crew and things of that nature. But interesting nonetheless. And then we also have archival interviews with Seijun Suzuki and Takado Kimura. Trailer, newly improved English subtitle translation, reversible sleeve, and we have a booklet in here, of course, as well. Nice little booklet, of course. Radiance Films is doing a really good job. I was watching this, and somebody walked in and said, what is this, a Criterion? And I was like, Well, it's kind of in a way it is kind of equivalent to a Criterion. It's kind of like an Arrow Criterion style kind of release. These movies are really well done, and Seijun Suzuki is a director. I've probably seen like 6 or 7 of his movies, even though he's made hundreds. But always great stuff. So check it out, The Tattooed Life, or just Tattooed Life. Okay, next up is from Arrow Video, and this is The Threat by Kinji Fukasaku, who, of course, I think would be most famous for the Battles Without Honor and Humanity films. He also did Green Slime, Battle Royale, Samurai Reincarnation, just a lot of films. Another director, I just talked about Seijun Suzuki, Fukasaku has done hundreds of movies, and I think that anybody who's watched Japanese films, genre films, has probably seen a handful of them. He's very good. So this one is a black and white film, and learning on the commentary, which is very interesting. This is the earliest, I think, of his movies that's had a Blu-ray release, so 1966, The Threat. And I couldn't help but notice almost immediately this reminded me of the original Desperate Hours with Bogart. And I was like, this is very kind of similar, but done in kind of the Japanese different style. What we have here is, I guess you call him a salaryman or a business kind of guy. And he has a wife and a young kid, and you think he's a masculine guy, has everything together. And one day, these two criminals that are recently escaped, one as a murderer, and he has this kind of dim-witted friend, who's in a bunch of movies. Very, very famous character actor that I've seen in dozens of Japanese films. So these two barge in the house, and they have a baby. And they tell the family, listen, we kidnapped this baby. We're asking for a ransom from this very respected, older man. This is his grandchild. And we want you basically to follow us, or we're going to do what we tell you, or we're going to kill your family. So it's a little bit kind of a different plot device. Instead of, hey, we have your family, go get the money from the bank, or something along those lines. Or it's, hey, we're using you as kind of the guy to walk around and make all the deals. So this guy is emasculated by these guys. His wife starts to resent him, all sorts of things like that. And at the same time, you have this constant crying baby, while we have this kind of brutal, killer, and this other kind of moron that there's always that threat, right? That threat with the wife and all that kind of stuff there over them. So he basically has to leave his family alone and kind of figure things out. And they don't just give him all the directions. They make him do all these things, but he's very witty and he keeps his wits about him, and he plays it very smart. There's these good moments where he's passing a cop and he doesn't know if he wants to tell the cop everything or he's planning on leaving, and there's all these things that remind him of his family and whatnot. And it's fairly short as well, not overly long, well acted, good thriller. It's a good, solid film. Well shot, well made. Again, Fukasaku doesn't really make bad movies. So, it's so crazy to me that you have all these, I went like these Japanese filmmakers, right, that make dozens and dozens and dozens of movies, and they all turn out really solid. Sometimes they make stuff that's completely different from the other stuff. I don't want to call these guys journeymen, because they do have their own voices and their own unique stuff in them, and their movies are fantastic. Their movies are too good to be journeyman directors, but then that's an insult to the American journeyman, like people call J. Lee Thompson a journeyman or something like that, or Richard Lester, and they make really good movies too, for the most part. A lot of them do. So it's really hard term. And I guess you'd just say studio director instead of journeyman. That makes sense. These guys were basically studio directors. The studio had them, and they were making movie after movie after movie, and they had the money, and they got it down to a science, and all of them are really good films. This is no different. The Threat. As far as the special features, brand new audio commentary by Japanese film expert Tom Mez. Warning, warning, danger, danger. A brand new 20-minute video appreciation by critic and Japanese film specialist Mark Schilling. I checked that out as well. It was pretty good. Newly commissioned artwork by Tony Stella. Illustrated collector's booklet featuring writings on the film by Haley Scallon. So this is a good film, solid film. If you like thrillers, if you like black and white thrillers, check this one out. I think it's pretty good. Good stuff. Okay, next up is the Shawscope Volume 3, Disc 5. And first we're going to talk about The Magic Blade. So, this one is by, who is it? Choi Yoon, I think is the director's name. He directed the other film in this disc as well. So this is Magic Blade, 1976. Tai Ling, I think, is the star of this. He's very familiar, been in tons and tons of movies. And I absolutely loved Magic Blade. This has a darker look to it, and there is supernatural elements, and I think this starts to bleed into the horror film, honestly, and I think it has similarities to, Intimate Confessions of a Chinese courtesan as well, like these exploitation elements, these exploitative elements, but this one is so much fun. The Magic Blade is one of my favorite Shaw Brothers movies, and I love this movie. So First and foremost, we have Tai Ling and another like noble kind of fighter, and the whole goal of these guys is to figure out who the best swordsman is. So they're like, we're battling to the death. Last year, our fight kind of got broken up. It didn't get finished, and I didn't get to finish you off and anything like that. So we're going to the death here. So these guys are like, agreed. So they start battling, and they have this noble kind of whole thing, and they're going at it. And what happens is a couple assassins jump in, and the Tai Ling's like, what's going on? And they're like, we want to kill this guy, and he's like, no, I am the one who's going to kill him. So he defends this guy. They kill these assassins. Come to find out, there's a bunch of assassins after this other guy, and Tai Ling's like, I'm going to help you out, and then we'll figure out what's going on. Before long, the assassins seem to be after both of them, and what we have is just the craziest rogues gallery of villains. We have amazing assassins. One, we have, of course, like the feminine one who has like a moment where like they come and they have a battle, and then they come back later, which I loved. We have the devil grandma or devil grandma, who is one of the best characters any Shaw Brothers film has ever had. She likes pushing this wagon, and she's poisoning people, and she's almost like a fucking vampire ghoul thing, and she's just weird as shit. But besides that, we also have these 5 like secret super fighters that the best like swordsman has sent after them because he wants to remain the best swordsman. So we have these like 5 people that keep popping in and out in the background. They'll show up and do something, and then they'll kind of disappear, and throughout the movie we learn who they are. So it's just like very Shaw Brothers, right? We have these 5 special huntsmen, these 5 generals, these 5 princes, or the 5 deadly venoms, right? So of course we have these guys, and they keep running into these, and these guys have to fight it off. They end up realizing that they need these things called the poison peacock darts. And it's the only thing that's going to be able to stop the main bad guy, who they do not know who he is yet. So they go to this kind of dynasty, or this place that protects them. I wouldn't say dynasty, but fortress that protects them. And they kind of bargain to get them, and the bad guys attack and everything like that. And they get these darts, and they explode, and they kill everything in sight. So this is the only thing that they need to fight. But it turns out there's some twists, there's some turns, there's amazing fight scenes, there's amazing bad guys, there's exploding fucking darts. Hands down, one of the best Shaw Brothers movies I've seen in a very long time. It ranks in the top 10 for me. And I like the kung fu stuff, but sometimes when we get a little bit more exploitive, a little bit more crazy, a little bit more wild, that's way up my alley. I love this one. I love the hero in it. I love the bad guys in it. I love the fights in it. There's like these chess scenes where there's actually a giant, like everybody's in a chess scene, and that's awesome. But as far as the Magic Blade is concerned, as far as special features, we have we have brand new commentary by Sam Deegan. She talks about the horror relations to this movie and all this stuff, and she loves the Devil Grandma as well. Great commentary. The Magic Blade, awesome stuff. Alright, next up in the Shaw Brothers set, we have Clans of Intrigue, same director as Magic Blade, made 1 year later, also starring Tai Ling. And though this one is not quite as good for me, but is still damn good. I enjoyed this one. I think I just really like this director. So Clans of Intrigue, like I said, 77. What we have here is there's these 3 kind of leaders of this group, and they all mysteriously die. They are poisoned, kind of like clan leaders, and they all die. They're poisoned. And this one character is the only one that really has access to that poison. He's like, I guess you call him like a thief, leader of a thief clan or something along those lines. And he's the only one that has access to it. So essentially the daughter of one of these clan leaders comes in and says, listen, I am going to kill you because you killed my father. You poisoned him. And he says, listen, I didn't do it. He says, I'm going to give you like a week to figure out who did it. And if you don't deliver, I'm going to have to kill you. So he starts to try to figure out who actually did this poison, who blackmailed him. And what leads him to find out is this long, crazy, bizarre story that involves, an old like Japanese character that was killed, and adopted kids and intersex kids and all sorts of weird stuff that is not typical. I don't mean weird like that, but weird in terms of a Shaw Brothers movie. You do have like some crazy stuff going on in like Human Lanterns or Curse of Evil, but that's like in the 80s. We're like, this is still like the 70s, and we're getting bizarre stuff like that. And I should mention, like, the term last week, I called it, like, Wixie. I always want to say it is, like, Wixie, which is not right. It's wuxia, which is the special kind of film, like, how they do these kind of weird, different, like, magic, like, running up the stuff and doing that, things like that. Has, like, a weird, like, element of, like, I guess you'd say, like, fantasy or magic kind of deal within their movies, and I was always mispronouncing it. But it's like wuxia, wusho, something along those lines instead of how my dumbass said it. But Clans of Intrigue is solid. The ending is great. The characters characters are pretty good. It's so hard to come down after Magic Blade. Like I like to compare it, but it's still really good. Like I was like, I had Magic Blade at a 4, and then I watched this and I was like, this is a 4. But I was like, Magic Blade's so much better. So I was like, I put it at a 4.5 because I liked it so much better and left this one at a 4. But Clans of Intrigue has the good cast, good characters, good mystery as well. A lot of the Shaw Brother movies do have mysteries, especially the ones that flirt with horror. This one I wouldn't call it necessarily horror, but the twists and turns are different as well. Overall, Clans of Intrigue is really good. And we do have a commentary as well. I think it's James Munge. James Munge did the commentary. We also have an alternate version of Clans of Intrigue via seamless branching featuring 4 extended scenes with additional gore and sensual material, which I didn't really notice. There was definitely like a lot of these crazy relationships and stuff going on in there, and I didn't notice any difference in the quality, how they looked. But I really like this one. It is only in Mandarin and English for Magic Blade. You can watch English Magic Blade. I remember that. And the other one is Mandarin and Cantonese. So, yeah. Clans of Intrigue does not have an English language track. Alright, next up is from the VSA line. I got this in the mail last week or this week, and I was like, I just got to watch it. I need my Cat 3. I need to check my Hong Kong stuff out. And this is Women on the Run, 1993, directed by Corey Yuen and David Lay. Dual directed. Corey Yuen was an actor as well, and he was in a bunch of movies. Actor, director. He what was the other one he directed? Yes, Madam, which is 1985. One of my favorite Hong Kong movies with Cynthia Rothrock and Michelle Yeoh. Fucking awesome movie. So we got Women on the Run here, and this started off, and it has this martial artist who is just training from a small town, and she's just like, no one really respected me. And we fast forward a little bit. Now she is a prostitute, and you're just like, this is really depressing, really sad. I think in mainland China, she's a prostitute, and she basically is just being mistreated, and she whoops somebody's ass because she's that ex-karate champion. She's also a drug addict, and what happens is she gets tangled up. She's like running, and this female police officer is a badass, ends up arresting her, and her this female officer's like boyfriend, who she's having an affair with, is like, listen, I want to send you undercover into Hong Kong. Is it Hong Kong? I don't remember exactly where they're sending them originally, back to mainland China, because she escapes to Hong Kong originally, and then they're sending her back to mainland China, and wants to send her undercover to find this massive drug dealer named King Kong. So what happens is these two start an unlikely bond. At first, they don't get along at all. That's your classic, even that happens in Yes, Madam, right? It's your classic, hey, two kind of characters, 48 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop, anything like that, right? It's not a buddy cop movie, but one's a cop and whatnot. So these two get paired up. One is a cop, and the whole movie's message is, don't trust a man. If you pick the wrong guy, your life is going to be a living hell. Men are shit. And hey, after watching this, I exactly would agree with them. So what happens is they end up getting tangled in, and they're going to be undercover cops, basically, and try to bring this drug dealer to, justice. But it's not exactly what it seems. There's some double crossing. There's some hiccups in the road, if you will, and they end up somewhere they're not supposed to be. Now, the first 2 acts, I was like, this is good. We got to see a little bit of naked martial arts stuff, which I thought was always great. Anybody fighting naked is awesome in a movie just because it's fucking bonkers. Happens a lot in Gunwoman, which is a really cool Japanese film. Really like that one by Carando. Can't think of Carando's last name. Maybe that is a lot, but he makes cool movies. That one's probably his best, Gunwoman. But so what happens is we get a little bit of naked martial artists and drug use. I was like, maybe that did the Cat 3. I know that drug use and some things that are a little bit less, harsh in America, and other ratings get harsher ratings in Hong Kong, and then some stuff they let slide. It's crazy. But so we get into the third act, and I like the movie fine enough. The action's good. There's some good squib action, some good bad guys, and we hit the third act, and it is one of the most nasty gang rape scenes I've ever seen. And I was just like, the characters are in a really devastating spot, and they're really vulnerable. And what happens at that point really bothered me. And, always rape scenes are always fucked up in movies. You're like, a lot of times I'm so used to watching them. Unfortunately, I'm desensitized. This one, it got me to the point where I was like, Jesus Christ. And it doesn't ruin the movie for me. If a movie can get me emotional or make me feel or get me disgusted or revolted in a way that I sympathize with the characters, I find that a positive in some ways. I know a lot of people cannot stand this stuff, can't watch this stuff, but it garnered me a lot of sympathy for these characters, and I got to the point where I wanted some catharsis. But it's not exactly what happens. But there is a really elongated, great, rainy, naked fight scene in that. But it does not necessarily end I wanted to, but the final act, there is some catharsis, revenge, which I absolutely loved. Loved the bonding of two characters that don't get along. My favorite scene, and yes, Adam, is when Cynthia Rothrock and Michelle Yeoh have been at each other's throats the entire film, and one just casually sticks out their hand like this, waiting for a five, and the other one, boom! I was just like, yes! I mean, like, I'm an idiot, right? I know when it's like, I'm just like Buddy, like cop, it's like, oh, they're gonna whoop some ass now. I just fall for that every time. But Women on the Run, love this movie. Great acting from both characters. Love both characters. Wanted them to survive. I ended up liking them both, and I like the ending too. Good stuff. This is special features, of course, scanned from 2K, 35 original camera elements. We have Cantonese mono with newly translated English subtitles along with English and Mandarin language dub soundtracks. I watched it and it's Cantonese. For some reason, the Hong Kong Shaw Brothers movies I like to watch in English because it's that vibe. But most other movies besides Italian movies and Spanish movies from the past, I will watch in their native languages. Commentary track with film writer Travis Woods. Hong Kong's Thelma and Louise interview with producer co-director David Lau. Or is it Lee? What you see is what you get. A conversation with producer Shan Tam and production manager Michael Parker. Corey Yoon and the Girls with Guns, a video essay by film historian and author Sam Deegan. Again, Sam Deegan pops up. I like that one. I enjoyed that one. But overall, really love this movie. Looked great. I did notice that some of the like bright daylight scenes when there's like a lot of white sky in the background, it looked a little off to me. Like not off, like just like somewhat pixelated at one certain point, and I know that 99% of these companies do a great job, and if that's the case, it's got to be something with the elements. But the rest of the movie look fucking fantastic, especially the dark scenes and the rainy scenes and stuff like that. Really love this one, Women on the Run. Okay, we're going to get into some 2024 movies. I got a slew of them here, and the first one up is Black-Eyed Susan. This is Vinegar Syndrome. What is it? Their modern day label, I believe. VSA 8. I put it in backwards. So many slipcovers. I can't get them all right. So this is by Scooter McRae, who directed my favorite SOV movie, along with a couple other ones, but I think Shattered Edge sits at the top. He directed Shattered Edge, directed 16 Tongues. But this is Black-Eyed Susan, an incredibly thought-provoking 2024 horror film. He's not directed a feature-length film in years. 16 Tongues was a long time ago. Shattered Edge was 1994. So, boom. I was super ecstatic to see this finally get released and directed by Scooter McRae. This is shot on 16mm, if I'm not mistaken, film, which it looks great. And this is a movie that you make that's on a budget, but you mostly just have good writing, good acting, just great ideas. And this is the definition of thought-provoking for me. Now, I was sitting here watching this film just completely captivated by it. It's not a gore fest. It's not, something that is like wildly exciting in terms of action or anything like that, but it's really just kind of a cerebral kind of film like that. So what we have here, in the very beginning, we have this guy aggressively talking to this woman, violently slapping her, beating her, and the woman just kind of responding, very submissive, almost robotic. And what we have here is this new sex doll that is made to take immense amounts of abuse. So the guy beats her and has sex with the doll. And the kind of creator walks in and he talks to him a bit, and the guy seems okay. He's drinking and everything seems all right. Come to find out, he dies a couple days later. Another guy, the guy running the show is at the funeral, and he meets up with an old friend of both of their. Well, he was a friend of this guy's, and he's a friend of his. And he starts talking and says, "You need a job, yada yada yada." And times have been rough on this guy. He's in a handful of movies. He's really strong in this. The lead character, I thought his performance was great. Brave too. And he decides if he's gonna end up kind of working with Susan and this kind of robot thing, this sex robot kind of deal, or sex doll, you would say. So it gets really complicated, and they bring up a lot of issues about what's it used for. Is it humane? Is it in the long run going to save humanity? How dark is humanity? What's inside yourself? What's darkness? It's all sorts of nastiness. It makes you kind of look inward in yourself, inward in humanity. Also ask a lot of questions. The performance from the sex doll is really good. Susan, of course, she's really solid, has the right demeanor, She talked about her performance. She said, I didn't want to do it overly robotic, but I didn't want to do it completely humanistic as well. So it's somewhere in the middle. I think it works well. But by the end of the movie, it's kind of like a weird self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. It makes me feel better, but like, what part of you feels better about it? It's just kind of a really fucked up movie. And there's a one key plot point or a one part that's introduced that I was just like, yeah, that's awful. It's truly fucking awful, but at the same time, just bleak. And Scooter McCrae in the interview says, you know, you don't want to make a movie that you just purposely shocking. You want to make a movie, write a movie, make a movie with boundaries. You don't think about your boundaries. You just do it. You don't think what other, and he's right. And Shattered Dead is that too. Shattered Dead, I remember when we did the best of 1994 was on my list, of course. The top films of 1994 because it's one of my favorites. And Mood said I probably would have had it on my list. My friend Mood was on there, and he said, but it's just too bleak and depressing for me. And that says something. Shattered Dead is a masterpiece. I think Black Eyed Susan is fucking fantastic. I would highly recommend picking this up. If you want something that's thought-provoking, don't think all-out gore fest or all-out, if you're thinking, oh, is this going to be really, like, sexy? It's not sexy. It's you know what I mean? It just, it says a lot about humanity, unfortunately, that I think is true. And, it's an ugly... It can be very fucking ugly. But what we have here, as the special features are concerned, shot entirely on motion picture film and finished in 4K. Commentary track with writer-director Scooter McCrae, moderated by film historian and author Michael Gingold. Group commentary track with producer Amy Kuj and cast members Yvonne Emily Fokker, Damian Moffatti, who is in Haunt, which I like, Mark Romeo, Scott Fuller, and Kate Caddo. Tough Love, writer-director Scooter McCrae and Black Eyed Susan. Test subjects, conversation with the cast of Black Eyed Susan, a whole new sensation. Producers Justin Martell and Amy Kuj on the making of Black Eyed Susan. Admire Me or Fuck Me, creating the world of Black Eyed Susan. An interview with cinematographer Anton Zinn. Listen to Your Replicants Warbling. Interview with composer Fabio Frizzi. That's right, the man, Fabio. Deleted extended scenes. Giovanni Malthacker screen test. Multiple trailers. Saint Frankenstein 17-minute film he made in 2015. A short film by the course director. And I should mention that they do a lot of small details in here with the lighting and how he talked about that, but he also talks about not shooting the film to make someone like a power dynamic, right? If I'm sitting down and some character walks in and he's standing above me and we film me down and they film him up, right? That's a power dynamic kind of deal. He avoided doing that on all his shots, and he also avoided having any actual females on screen. Almost they're just in the background. They're not actually there, except for, of course, Black Eyed Susan. But she's AI, man. And this is like the next step from Cherry 2000. I think it says a lot more about humanity in a more realistic way than something like Ex Machina. I know people love that movie, and I think it's a well-famed film, but I just don't think it says much that we haven't seen done better. And it's kind of, I guess... as masquerading as an intellectual film. I mean, I can barely speak, but still, you know what I mean? That's just the way I feel about it. Anyways, Black Eyed Susan, fucking fantastic. Check it out. Love it. Okay, another one from 2024. We have the directors of Inside. And Inside's a fantastic French extreme film if you haven't seen it. And so these directors have made Le Vide, which I need to see, but other ones, Among the Living, I think was one they had. They had a slew of movies, and anything else I saw after Inside, I wasn't madly in love with. They never really won me over with anything that I've seen. So I was like, The Soul Eater, I'm definitely going to check it out. 2024, 4K here by these guys. Let me think of their names, of course. I always mispronounce their names or don't remember them, and I should probably. I know it's like, it's going to take forever to find them. Oh, Julian Mari and Bastillo. So, yeah, Inside's a masterpiece, by the way. And The Soul Eater, I didn't really know exactly what to expect on this one, so I pop it in. Well shot, well made, well acted, solid story, very police procedural. I'd say it's more of a thriller police story than a horror film, but it definitely has horror elements, especially when we get to the gore department, which you can imagine these guys are not going to skimp on. So what we have here is we have this detective, and he's hitchhiking to this small town. He gets picked up by this woman, and right away you're like, this is a Let's Sleep With Corpses Lie, like back and forth. They did not like each other very much, but they realize they're going to the same place to kind of look at this murder, and it was a brutal murder of this couple, and they look like they were biting each other and killing each other, and no one really knows what the hell happened here. It's very confusing. And they're in this small town, and there's a lot of people kind of covering it up, but before long, other people start to end up dead the same kind of bizarre way, almost like they're killing themselves or attacking each other, and it's really weird. And there's this kind of urban legend called the Soul Eater, where it's something in the woods and it kind of takes you away. And a small surviving child from the couple that was murdered is kind of the focus on here. And they start to dig deeper and they realize that there's kind of a computer, and that's where we get to like more of the police procedural kind of thriller aspect. And there's just these people that are involved, and a lot of them are getting picked off and they're going crazy. And the very end of the film, we have this big reveal of what's going on, and it surprisingly makes a lot more sense. Like, you know, when they're getting to these points, you're like, oh shit. And you're like, oh yeah, that makes a little bit more sense. And there's a part in here where, like, did I forget? Did they say there's anything with forensics or testing their blood? I cannot remember. The gore is pretty nasty. It's got a really dark subject matter that is just bothersome, which another movie this week has somewhat of the same subject matter. I won't spoil that. But overall, Soul Eater is a solid, well-directed thriller police procedural horror film that I would recommend if you're looking for that kind of deal. It goes into the dark territory. You know, there's a lot of good thrillers. I don't think it ever gets as dark as something like The Treatment from Artsploitation, which is just a great film, but just I don't know how many more times you could watch The Treatment. But yeah, this one is solid. Soul Eater. Check it out. Okay, next up we have Die Alone. This is a Canadian film by the director of Wolf Cop and Another Wolf Cop. So completely different stuff. I think Laurel, what is Laurel? I don't want to say Dean because Lauren Dean. Is that something along those lines? But director of Wolf Cop and Another Wolf Cop. Love Another Wolf Cop. Think it's a fantastic, hilarious movie. So I was like, oh, this is kind of strange that this person did this film. A little bit different from what I've known them from, which is a good thing, cool thing. So we kind of open up, and the movie grabs you right away. There's a suicide on screen within the first 30 seconds, and I was like, oh, I guess we're into this right away. And we have a character talking, and we're going to have a little bit of narration, and we're going to have a post-apocalyptic kind of storyline here. This character wakes up. They do not remember anything at all. They have amnesia, and they're in this post-apocalyptic world. They're looking for Emma. They're wandering around. Where's Emma? Where's Emma? There's a couple villains that almost kill him. They are killed by this other woman in Carrie Ann Moss from the Matrix films, and I watched a movie not too long ago. She was in like an action film that was pretty fun. That was MVD released. I can't remember. I'm getting too old for this shit. But she pops up and saves his ass. She's an older woman, of course, probably in her 40s, something like that. And she takes him 40s. I'm almost 40, but she takes him back to his house and kind of explaining to him. And he's like, I gotta find Emma. I gotta find Emma. And she's like, listen, you don't know what's going on out there. There's a lot of crazy shit. And it turns out that they're thinking nature fought back. So it's kind of an eco horror kind of deal, right? Where nature has just kind of had enough, and it's kind of these plants, kind of viral thing, kind of going into people and taking them over, and they're becoming more plant than human. There's a really cool skeleton outside that's just there, and you're like, what the fuck? How's this skeleton functioning? And you kind of learn later it's more plant than anything else, but it's really cool, and cobwebs can't barely do anything. That's fun. That plays into the very ending as well. But as we progress, we kind of learn little bits of story. We see more of the flashback, and he's out there still trying to find Emma, and not everything is as it seems. The reveal is fantastic. It's a great ending. It's absolutely devastatingly sad. But, I really enjoyed it. I thought this was a good movie at the beginning, a solid movie in the middle, and a fantastic movie at the end. And the post-apocalyptic stuff, you're like, we've seen this before, we've done this before. But, at the center of it, it's really something a little bit different, and the way it's told is good. The acting is solid. Carrie Ann Moss is really good in here. Crimson and Clovers is a great use of the song here, over and over. And I'm a sucker for that kind of shit, man. You play a song in there like Strange Darling with Love Hurts, or this one and this, or even Y2K had some good the needle drops. I am a sucker for that kind of shit. Sets the mood, man, especially get a classic song in there. But I thought this was a really solid movie. Die Alone, would recommend. Okay, this next one here is Mononoke, the movie, The Phantom of the Rain. Now, I believe this was originally kind of like a couple-part movie made in the early 2000s. This is kind of a redo from Netflix here. This is an anime movie, and they're making a second, I think, and a third part. So this one's relatively short, an hour and like 25, 30 minutes. So this one is bizarre, weird story. It's a period piece, of course, and it's kind of fun watching this after watching all these Japanese kind of films, period pieces and everything like that. So Oh, I'm seeing the anime kind of deal. Basically, there's these two women that are going to be, kind of the concubine of the castle and whatnot for the royalty of this place, and they go in and they need training and everything like that. And they meet this kind of strange kind of, like trader kind of guy outside. He's dressed completely weird and bizarre, and you're like, is he bad? What's he doing out here? And he's kind of got medicine and spells and all sorts of weird shit. So they go in here and they immediately start like something's not right. The water that sits at the bottom of this place seems to be kind of tainted. Which reminds me of the one I just watched, Clans of Intrigue, the Shaw Brothers Hong Kong flick. So we kind of have the tainted water source within the castle, and this whole thing's kind of polluting everything. And it possibly brings forth a demon. We have to figure out whether this demon came from, why is it here, and the history of all these characters kind of intermingled. At times, characters will get picked off by this wild demon, and it's up to a couple people to try to stop them. Don't want to spoil everything. The movie is hyper stylized, incredibly stylized. Some would say too stylized. The colors are magnificent. The anime is really strong. The colors are fucking magnificent. But the editing is like this. Chop, 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 suey everywhere. It's chopped up so much that with those bright colors and kind of hard on the eyes with the editing, where you're like, I don't know where I'm at, and what's going on here, or you're losing me here. For the most part, I like this. I think it's really good. I think the editing and the bright colors together is too much. One or the other would be fine, but when you combine them, it's just really not easy to follow, even though it's a fairly straightforward story. But that is what is it? Mononoke the movie, Phantom of the Rain. Fun title as well. It's on Netflix. Check it out if you're interested. All right, next up is The Vourdalak. This is a wild, strange, bizarre film. Now, this kind of follows the storyline of, the Black Sabbath segment. The Vourdalak, same name with, of course, Boris Karloff, where he is this vampire that comes back and they pick off their family. See, the Vourdalak is a vampire that doesn't focus on just whoever, or it focuses on a family. So if I'm bit, I'm going to come back and, try to get my brother or my sister or my mom or my dad or my grandpa, whoever is my favorite of that family member, and keep seducing him, and we'll come back every night and get the whole family kind of contained. It's also done in a movie from 1971 called Night of the Devils, which is a really strong film that Raro, I think, put out on Blu-ray a long time ago. But if you get a chance, check out Night of the Devils, and of course check out Black Sabbath by Mario Bava. So I was like, okay, why not check out a more updated version? And there is a tinge of dark comedy in this. So we have this kind of sophisticated Frenchman kind of going through, I believe he's a Frenchman, or is it Eastern European? I'm not exactly sure what location this takes place in. That's my bad, but it's definitely a period piece. Like I said, we have this sophisticated Frenchman. I believe he's a Frenchman. And he's kind of traveling through, and he gets lost. He was robbed, and he's trying to find shelter. Of course, we have classic Universal style, classic Hammer style. Nobody's going to let him in at night. Nobody's going to let him in, right? There's obviously something out in the woods. He makes it to this castle of this family, and they take him in. Their father figure is missing at the time. We have a slew of siblings and one kind of grandson there. And they take him in, and they start to kind of introduce him to the characters, and everybody seems really sad. There's one woman that has a lost love, and we learn her story, and they start kind of forming kind of somewhat of a relationship, a romance, if you will. And everything seems to be going okay, possibly, until the father is found nearby, really close to the castle, and he is kind of sick, very sick. So fucking sick that instead of using an actual actor, they decide to use a puppet for the character. And he's this pale, weird, gross, skinny puppet thing, and he's so fucking weird, and that adds this like crazy quality to it that I thought was really cool. And I don't think people are selling that enough, that he's a puppet and he looks weird, and his dialogue with the grandson is bizarre, and you know exactly what's going to happen. The family's full of cowards. They won't do anything. They argue amongst each other until, of course, the Vourdalak's going to do what the Vourdalak's going to do, and it's going to start picking on certain family members while the entire family is in complete agony. What I really liked about this movie, the whole movie's good, solid, well made, well directed, well acted, everything that you would ask for in a film, pretty much, is this setup with our romance between our lead character here and this kind of like haunted, damaged sister character. They have this long conversation, and they talk about this certain geographical location that kind of outlooks the mountains, and how it plays in at the very end. Chef's kiss. Great ending to a good movie. So The Vourdalak, check it out. Next one here is Caddo Lake, and this is, I believe, on Hulu, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so this one I didn't know much about, and it was more related to like a sci-fi thriller or like mystery drama, and that's exactly what it is. Not much horror in here, and saying that, I don't want anybody to be disparaged from watching this, because there was a tiny, I guess, bit horror. I wouldn't consider this a horror movie, but Caddo Lake blew me away. Now, I was watching this, and it was kind of the beginning. It was like, what is this, where the crawfish go or sing or whatever that movie was, kind of that southern kind of deal, whatnot, kind of element here. And I was like, oh, this is good. And we have these kind of like family dramas. We have these kind of dueling stories going on, where we have an older sister who's like obviously doesn't get along with her mother and her new husband, and they're arguing, and she just like always kind of avoiding her little sister, and they all just really don't get along at all. And then we also have this story of this kind of this younger man. He's like probably in his like late 20s, early 30s, and the mother has passed, and he's haunted by this entire thing. And his dad's kind of out looking for him, and he's just kind of meandering through life. And he has like a love that he lost, and his mother has died. And he's never been the same since, and she had a lot of medical condition, and he's just haunted by the death. And what happens is something strange is going on. Things are appearing in the swamp that shouldn't be there. Things from a long period, like butterflies that have been long extinct, or alligator will be just bitten beyond belief like that. Nothing can bite an alligator like that. All sorts of stuff going on. And we just keep following these two storylines, and you're like, okay. And they're so well separated that you never realize that there's two storylines going on. Like, you just somehow think that they're the same time and place, and I don't want to give anything away. But before I give anything really away, I think it's a fantastically clever written script that I think really helps. It's incredibly dramatic, and I realized here that what this movie does gets to me. It makes me emotionally, like, kind of crippled in, like, a good way for a movie to get to me like that, and I think it's great. But before I spoil, so I just loved it. Now, getting to the spoiler stuff here. Now, the movie has two different storylines, and you don't realize that they're not the same time, same place. We realize that all these characters are kind of, you're like, oh, they're just going to cross at one point. They are going to cross, but they're going to cross in the most crazy time-traveling weird way. It's a time-traveling film, and there's something with this kind of swamp, this kind of lake, right? Caddo Lake. There's a dam nearby and all that kind of stuff like that. And when it's dry, weird shit happens. So a character disappears, and another character, they both, these kind of two simultaneous characters from different times, realize that this lake has special powers, and they start jumping around times, not even knowing who they actually are or how they relate, and eventually how they relate, and who these people cross paths with during the duration of this movie is incredibly touching, incredibly heartfelt, and really well constructed. The script had to be probably went through with a fine tooth comb just to figure out all these things and how they correlate and everything like that. And the time matches up, but I love this movie. I thought it was great, and I realized what gets me in movies. It's not the loss of a parent or the loss of a loved one or something, or a child in a film. That can be emotional, it can be touching, but what gets me is the idea that someone is not living in the past. They have to be living in the past, but they get the chance to possibly be able to change the past or go to the past. Like, if we're looking at Christmas Carol, go to the past and see the past. This time, that always depresses the shit out of me in movies. Just makes me completely emotional. But what are the idea that you could go into the past and touch the past and possibly change it? The Final Girls is a movie where you could kind of run it. That is a clever movie, I think, how they did that. But, the way this one does it, I think, is really brilliant, But Caddo Lake, liked it a lot. Good stuff. Next one here is by Rose Glass, another 2024 movie. Definitely thriller, drama before horror. No horror, I would say. Maybe some fantastical elements towards the end. And this is Love Lies Bleeding. Rose Glass directed Saint Maud a couple years ago. That's a great film by A24. This one's also A24. This one's good, too. Period piece here. Kristen Stewart, and a newcomer. I'm sure she's been doing this forever. And everybody's like, newcomer. And she says, I've been acting for 20 years, motherfuckers. That's how it always is. But I do not know her actress name. She's fucking fantastic. Ed Harris is in here. Dave Franco's in here. Everybody, it's great acting. First and foremost, fantastic acting. Kristen Stewart is a lesbian that works at a gym, masculine kind of 80s gym where everybody's using steroids. Dave Franco is her brother-in-law. He's a real piece of shit. And he's married, obviously, to her sister that he constantly beats and abuses and all that, things like that. So Kristen Stewart one day spots this kind of female bodybuilder that comes into it. She's like amazingly unique looking, and I mean that as the utmost compliment. People that look different, that have this like strange attraction to them at the same time, are the best looking people, right? People that don't look like everybody else, but they have this weird, like she's just completely drawn to her, and she's just like, and they have this instant kind of connection, and they start this kind of really passionate kind of sexual relationship. Ed Harris is her Kristen Stewart's father. He's a criminal. He's no good. He kind of runs this gun range and all this kind of shit like that, but he also has got some shady dealings underneath. It's going to get complicated. It's going to get crazy. It's going to get weird when our character, our bodybuilder, starts to use a lot of steroids and wants to make this competition, and there's some jealousy and there's some crime elements and there's a couple murders possibly and some cover-ups, and it gets real fucking wild and intense and some hallucinatory stuff and some fantastical stuff. Overall, exceptionally well acted movie. Hot and steamy. Hot and steamy movie. Dave Franco is a fucking creep. Ed Harris is always great. Love his demeanor in here. There's one scene when he gets incredibly upset and he does something that I did not see fucking coming, and I was like, holy shit. But really well made movie, visually amazing, period piece shit going on. And if you're looking for a crazy kind of, would you even call it a neo-noir? Maybe you could. Check it out. I think you'll really like it. A weird ending. Not weird ending. Weird choice at the ending. I don't dislike the movie for it, but I definitely was thinking, that's bizarre. That's different. Different's good. Because you always remember it. You always come back to it. Sometimes a movie that sticks to landing or something that's very typical, you'll like it, you'll forget it. I don't think I'll forget Love Lies Bleeding, especially the ending. I'm like, yeah, weird shit at the end, right? Yeah, people are going to talk about it, and they'll probably revisit it, and they'll probably fall in love with different parts of the movie. But overall, I really like Love Lies Bleeding. Good stuff. Okay, the next one is a Shudder film, and this is Carnage for Christmas, 2024, of course. And this director did a handful of films, like Satanic Panic, and what was the other ones I think they had? Their movies are kind of like trans kind of stories, trans films about trans characters and stuff like this one. And Carnage for Christmas is no different. I believe an Australian film here, Aussie. So we have a podcaster that is trans, and they're obsessed with true crime, which is very typical nowadays. Everybody's obsessed with true crime. It's very popular. It's always been popular, but podcasters, there's a million of them. So she was from this small town, this shitty small town where she obviously doesn't want to go back, and she's got to go back to visit her sister and for Christmas and everything like that. Christmas movies in Australia are always bizarre. What was that one that I really liked from Australia a few years back? Probably like 5 or 6. It's not, I cannot remember what it is. It's an Australian Christmas movie. Artsploitation put it out. I love the movie, and I cannot remember its name. Like I said, I'm getting too old for this shit. If the movie is made before 2000, I know every detail about it, but the newer ones, I just never remember shit. So this one, essentially, it's an Aussie movie on Christmas, so there's no snow. Well, it doesn't ruin every movie. Remember Silent Night, the kind of semi-remake to Silent Night, Deadly Night, which is okay, no snow. But this one here, okay. So she goes back to her small town. There's this kind of old story, this folk kind of lore mythos with this kind of weird kind of killer that everybody said lived in this house and possibly murdered his family. Come to find out, she actually was the one that found the body of the child, so she has that kind of long history and whatnot. The whole kind of backstory when they're talking about reminds me of Prom Night, right? Not that somebody fell out the window, but there's a group of kids that found some shit they shouldn't see. So essentially goes back to her small town and murders start happening, right? And her being this kind of true crime podcast expert, she cares more about the murders than anyone else. She wants to figure out what the hell's going on. Well, her group of friends, people with her sister's friends start disappearing, lesbian characters, stuff like that. So she's really interested in it. We're introduced to the whole town, kind of see the corrupt element of the town, the local locals that she runs back into and all this kind of stuff like that. The gore's decent, I would say. There's like some guts on the ground and stuff. There's one like use of CGI that I thought was kind of poor. The special effects aren't like overly amazing. The budget's pretty low. I would say it's a very low budget film. Overall, I like the lead performance from our actress here. At first during the podcasting, I was like, I don't know, but that's podcasting where it's kind of like memorized, kind of like script form when she's doing it. I was like, it seems script formed, but I was like, it kind of should because it is kind of scripted. But as the movie progresses, she seems way more natural and just a decent character. I liked her character, tough, and it has some humor in it towards the end. it's a little dark, but I think the movie's supposed to be kind of dark. It's not fantastically like directed in terms of like budget and stuff like that. It's not poorly directed, but it's a budget. The budget does show. I guess that's the best way to say it. Not overly horrible, not amazing either, but for a low budget Christmas Australian trans kind of movie, it has a lot of unique qualities about it, and I think it's worth checking out if it sounds like it's up your alley. I didn't love it, but didn't dislike it either. Sometimes like I don't watch as many super low budget movies as I used to, but I didn't mind this one too much, and I haven't watched too many Christmas horror movies this year. So Carnage for Christmas. I was thrown off because it kept saying director of I was reading it, Satanic Panic, which came out a few years ago, and I thought that movie was pretty decent, had a decent budget, on a low budget, but still a decent budget. And I was like, it's Satanic Panic, which is a very funny punny name. I like that. And I was like, oh shit, like this is a different director, different filmmaker, and I can't think of the filmmaker's name off the top of my head. But check it out if it sounds like it's up your alley. It has a lot of unique qualities about it. Now unique kind of like moves to it, but overall the story is kind of something you've seen before, but maybe just a couple little differences in there. So it's all right. All right, let's get into those 1982 movies.
I know I'm human. If you were all these things, then you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
You son of a bitch, you moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You son of a bitch, you left the bodies and you only moved the headstones! You only moved the headstones! Why?
For a girl like you to come into my life, I've been waiting for a girl like you, the love that will survive. I've been waiting for someone new to make me feel alive. Yeah, waiting for a girl like you to come into my life.
You bitch! You called me a bitch!
What's in the basket?
How do we know she is alive?
stop it. There's no more time. You've got to... Please, stop it. Stop it now. Turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop
The first one up is The Vampire Inspector, Japanese TV movie. This, I think, is on Tubi, possibly, but there's YouTube as well. Not heard much about this film, never heard anyone talk about it, never seen anyone look at it or anything, but The Vampire Inspector. So I popped this one up. Right in the beginning, we have these kind of two guys that, period piece as well, or almost all Japanese movies really feel like period pieces. So they kind of wash up on shore. They're the last two people on this boat that survived. They don't know what's going on. And these two kind of women find them. They're fucking vampires, guys. They lead them to basically this small place where it's this one guy here. He's the vampire inspector. And he talks to them a bit. I believe one of them is killed. We have a lot of like very similarities to Dracula in the beginning. Like this is Jonathan Harker and the two kind of brides or two daughters of Dracula, whatever you want to call them, kind of try to feast on him and they're stopped. One of the characters does end up surviving, but the vampire inspector is on his way because he has a revenge vendetta. He has this vendetta against a certain clan, this certain group of people, this family, I guess, if you will. And he goes back to the mainland Japan and he wants to take them out. He brings his brides with him and he kind of infiltrates this small group and starts to kind of bite people and turn them into vampires. And no one really believes anything that's going on. There is kind of a holy man that Christianity at this time is banned outright, and he says, wear these cross, and he's put in prison for it. But before long, when other people end up being turned to vampires, and some really good imagery here, a lot of good stuff, a lot of good kind of mixture of like period piece Japan and classic kind of vampire tropes in there. It's overall fun, and we kind of learn why he has this vendetta, and of course it's a love story, reincarnation kind of, if you will, and whatnot, and sacrifice at the very end, kind of play into that. But there's also a mixture of like sword fighting with Dracula, stuff like that. Not like overly high flying like you would expect for Dracula to do, but pretty typical of like samurai kind of sword fights and everything, or Yakuza movies. Overall, I was happy with this. I was like, man, this is well shot. This is well directed. The only thing that kind of sticks out that makes it look a little bit cheaper than other Japanese productions of the time is the wigs aren't very good. Like, you see the stitching more on the sides when you have that. That doesn't look that great, but everything else is good. It's solid. It's well acted. It's well directed. There's some I love the main vampires in here. All the vampires are really cool. The two kind of vampire brides are spectacular. So overall, this is a really good kind of mixture of traditional vampire lore with period piece Japan kind of classic stuff. I liked it a lot. The Vampire Inspector. Okay, the next one here is another Japanese TV movie from 1982, also on Tubi and YouTube. And this is a Japanese, it's a ghost Japanese story. Something very generic. I'm going to double check. A ghost love story of Japan. Do not like that title. Very generic, but it kind of fits because this is based on the same classic literature. What is it? The Tales of the Haunted Peony or Peony Lantern. The Tales of the Peony Lantern is basically what this is based on. That story is one of the oldest, like, I think, ghost stories from Japan. It was made famously in 1968 by Brides of Hades, by Dowie Productions, which I covered on here. So it's a story that's been told a bunch. And this is basically the 1982 version of that story. Almost verbatim, except we don't have really the kind of ghost trying to pay off some characters to kind of take all the spells off. We kind of cut that part out, and we don't have that comeuppance. So essentially what we have here is a lonely man that lost his wife a couple years ago. He's very desperate, he's very depressed, and he ends up kind of falling for this woman that he shouldn't. And at first you think it's kind of just a typical forbidden love. He comes from a bad family, this woman comes from a very high class family. It will never work out between you. No, it won't work out because of the class difference. That's not going to really be that big of a difference. It's not going to work out because she's a fucking ghost, and with the ghost they come out at night and they drain you. So he basically starts sleeping with her, has these sexual relations, and it's draining him every night, right? And when they figure that out, people are going to put the spells on his house and everything like that, and it's going to end as you expect it to kind of end, in that aspect where, you know, she shows up with her kind of maid to help her figure all this out. Like I said, it's the same story. If you're familiar with the Brides of Hades story, this is the 1982 updated version, which seems to be kind of a lot of things what Japan would do. Like in 81, we had that Summer of Evil, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that was another updated version of a classic Japanese ghost story. And then I feel like The Living Koji from 1981, or that's 82 this year. I feel like that was very something that I've seen as another Japanese story. So we have these classic Japanese rendition stories just being updated throughout the 80s, which I never knew really was a thing, honestly, because, you know, early in Japan, we have a lot of the katsu erotic films, but we don't always have that many Japanese horror films. Like, we have these ones that lean over, like Samurai Reincarnation has these supernatural elements, but they're not necessarily horror films. That one I do consider a horror film from 81. But then as we progress, we're starting to get more ghost-oriented stuff, kind of redos of these. We don't, not the only things besides the Nakatsu erotic films showing up are these ghost stories that are basically renditions of the 60s. And Japan had a huge output of horror compared to the 50s and 60s than they did to the early 80s. Even the 70s, there's a lot of cool ghost stories, a lot of like the haunted cat kind of stuff like that. But, you know, like Kuroneko and Onibaba and stuff like that. So, like, these ones are a little bit different, but it's really cool to see these kind of classic stories told in a Japanese way. Like, of course, the Vampire Inspector is kind of Japanese lore, which I would directly compare to, I should have mentioned this, like Vampire Doll from 1970, which I think is a Toho film. They had the Vampire Trilogy in the early 70s, which was kind of different for the time, very reminiscent of Hammer. This one is almost a verbatim remake of Brides of Hades, but just a little bit different, but still good. I liked it. I think I prefer the Vampire Inspector of the two. Okay, let's get into the Patreon pick, and this is 1993, Naked by Mike Leigh, and I honestly have never seen a Mike Leigh movie. I know that's bad. Mike Leigh is a very popular director. This film stars David Thewlis. It's put on by Criterion. So yeah, here we go. Boy, how do you talk about Naked? This movie was fantastic. English film. David Thewlis is fucking... It's like a tour de force performance. It's like one of the best performances I've seen. Some of the best dialogue I've seen. Thought-provoking, and more than just his dialogue, and the way his actions are, and the way his humanity is. Again, watching Black Eyed Susan and this, you're just like, man, just watching this kind of stuff and just getting a side of humanity that is so dark. You know, like watching movies like just are brutally violent or like very disgustingly sexual or one thing, but like when we started getting into the human psyche and these moments why people do what they do and why they do it and who they are and all that kind of shit, it just gets really, really dark to the point of like anxiety-ridden sadness. But so what we have here is Naked. David Thewlis is sexually like very aggressive with this woman. He basically is raping her. He's chased away from London, and he's chased away from London. I don't remember exactly where he goes, but he has this postcard from an ex of his in Louise, so he ends up showing up there, and she's not there, and he starts talking to her roommate Sophie, and he turns on the charm. Like, we get the idea that David Thewlis in this movie, you don't really know much about him, but he's very charming, very intellectual, very well-read, very witty, and just has this really, like, great snark about him, but he's also charming in a weird way. But after you get right under the surface, you realize this guy is a fucking piece of shit. But at the same time, it's almost like he wants to get to know you. Once he figures you out, he wants to bring you down. Just take you down. So he immediately has this kind of sexual relations with Sophie, and she becomes incredibly attached to David Thewlis. He wants nothing to do with her, but he's sticking around. He ends up leaving that night, and we have this big kind of, like, I guess, like one crazy night deal where he runs into these kind of two young couple that are constantly fighting, and they're separated, and just the way he interacts with people like that, when he's yelling, he's like just making fun of people, talking down on them, but they're not smart enough to realize it. But at the same time, this guy almost seems like a drifter. Like, he doesn't have a home, so he's like a loser of society because he feels like he's above the human intellect, where he just feels like he does not want to partake in the human intellect. But at the same time, it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy where, like, you think you're too good, you think you're too different, but you start thinking so far out of the box, you start thinking so intellectual that you're so different from everybody else that you're no longer compatible in society, that at the same time you try to have these conversations with people, but you have a superiority complex at the same time, that you're just you're almost like antisocial personality disorders at the same time. Not to mention that you have a very sadistic kink in sex that you do to people that don't want to partake in it. But so like Thewlis is this character that is, I don't want to say he's endearing, he's intriguing, he's interesting, he's amazingly witty and snappy, and he's just so much fun to watch, and he has these rants about life and philosophical things and religious things that are interesting as shit. He has this interaction with this night watchman, which is absolutely fantastic, and at first it seems kind of jovial and friendly, but he starts to get in this guy's head, and he kind of realizes who he is, and he's like, I'm just going to fucking ruin this guy's dream, basically the way he thinks. And you see this character Brian like go from like wide-eyed and very interested in having this conversation to defeated and just distraught. And he interacts with all these different people and does that to them. And there's no rhyme, no reason. Sometimes you feel like that. And he even says himself, he's like, no matter how smart you are, sometimes you just don't know why. But there's also this other character named Jeremy, who is like, even like, is he on the same? Is he the same? But it's so weird because this guy is basically, I would say, a nihilist. He just goes around and he says, I'm going to kill myself by the time I'm 40 because I don't want to get old. And he just is basically a violent rapist, but he comes from an upper class kind of mentality, so he doesn't feel like he should be caught. He doesn't feel like he's doing anything wrong, and everybody's just in his way. He treats them however he wants. And there's a violent rape scene in the film, and this character, like, you're leading to these characters and you think it's just going to be this thing, and it's not really the thing you expect. And at the end, you think, has this person and Johnny found redemption and David Lewis found redemption? But hey, sometimes people like that just they never settle. They never find redemption. They never find catharsis in anything because some people are just bad, or some people just don't belong in society, or some. And it's just such a weird movie. A great movie. A well-made, well-directed, well-acted movie. Love the movie. Fucking fantastic movie. Would watch again in a heartbeat. Loved it, but it's an interesting movie. First and foremost, it gets your mind moving. Sometimes in bad ways, sometimes in good ways. But hey, that's Mike Lee's Naked. Great stuff. All right, let's get these questions, comments, concerns. Ken Coakley, I watched Wicked last night. Even though musicals aren't really my cup of tea, songs aside, it was decent. I knew that this wasn't part of the canon, including the original film. The story was clearly an indictment against racism. The Witch of the West being a pariah, even by her own parents, as well as a pariah, even by her own parents, as non-white characters, wasn't lost on me. For some reason, the film's atmosphere reminded me of a live-action version of The Little Mermaid that came out a year ago or so. The FX were decent enough, except for when Green-Skinned Witch was born. Congratulations to the parents of a new baby Hulk. Then the disabled sister became that way because the father force-fed the mother some concoction that must be made up like snickleberry juice of some Dr. Seuss-like concoction. The makeup people did make Cynthia Erivo prettier than Ariana Grande. It certainly is an Oscar contention, as is Nosferatu. I didn't want to jinx it, but the Oscars aren't as bigoted against genre films anymore. After The Way to the Water and Parasite both taking home the big award, when Psycho, Jaws, and Exorcist didn't win, this could be a big for horror. The upcoming Oscars could be interesting. An interesting fact about the original Wizard of Oz, Billy Burke, who played Gilda the Good Witch of the North, was 53 when she shot the film. She was also referenced in Exorcist 3. I also watched Infested, which was a decent film. I could have done without the dog being killed, but the aftermath was well done. I started off not liking Caleb, the main character. He had exotic animals, which is a nice way of calling them wild and venomous animals that belong in the wild. I don't mind reptiles, but snakes, tarantulas, gators, cobras, and boas are out of the question. A guy in my town had a pet constrictor that strangled his 4-year-old daughter. Since then, I have been for wild animals staying in the wild. Yeah, a lot of animals... they belong in the wild, and as Rutger Hauer said in Hobo with a Shotgun, is in reference to I want to go see the zoos and the bears. He says bears don't belong in a zoo. I followed that up with Sting. I liked it better than Infested. And this one, you didn't know who the monster was, the spider or the creepy little girl. I could have made the movie much shorter. I would lure the spider outside on a sunny day, then hold a huge magnifying glass till it caught fire. Joking aside, while I was calling the kid creepy, I started to remember when I played with ants, worms, and caterpillars. I did that when I was that age. I think that was how I became compassionate about animals. Yeah, I think kids fuck with bugs, and then at a certain point they grow up and they're like, what the fuck am I doing? This is not good. I also watched Arcadian as well. I actually liked it. The film was atmospheric and Nicolas Cage wasn't bad in it. The creatures were pretty cool, and the headbanging and moving around by rolling. Yeah, the monsters were the coolest part. Mike Moore, I believe it was a while back when you were on the Exploding Heads podcast, I heard you mention if a director's favorite movie is Scream, the movie is probably shit. I just saw an interview with the director, a cast interview of The Heretics, and the first thing the director said is his favorite movie of all time is Scream. Like, I'm okay, I'm out. Haha, great. I said indie movie. I didn't say that, but he jokes. He's like, mostly joking. I've not seen it, though. The trailer did blow me away, but I'll probably check it out. I liked Heretic. I said any indie horror director. It's like, my favorite movie is Scream. Like, no budget. And then immediately you're like, nah. I'm sorry. I feel that way. I've never seen a good indie horror movie that was directed by somebody whose favorite movie was Scream. They're all the same movie. Super Saiyan Death Metal God. I am on board with A24 setting up the Fred Durst cinematic universe. Haha, keep rolling. Yep, of course. Ilk Vomit, just putting this out there for Mr. Parker fans. The Hanzo films can be seen on HBO Max. Thank you. Jason Bovey, enjoyed your Hanzo the Razor review. I picked up the box set back in May, and I hadn't watched them yet, but now I'm way too hyped. Way too hyped. Yeah, I got to check them out. Check them out. Let me know what you think. EJ... or MJ, I thought Sleep was real fun. Enjoyed it a lot. It's a good movie. Way up, dude. Gives me a thumbs up and all these kind of little things and emojis. Thank you, Nick Moore. And a big round of applause for Mr. Nicolas Cage. He's been scaring up some major horror creds this past few years. After the travesty that was Wicker Man 06, I was unsure whether I wanted to watch anything that even featured Nick Cage. Luckily, in a world past Kick-Ass, The Color Out of Space, and Mandy, I remember that Mr. Nick Cage is a fine thespian indeed. It's just that some of his projects suck balls. I recently saw and enjoyed zombie movie titled Die Alone, featuring Carrie Ann Moss, Douglas Smith, and Frank Grillo. If you're still not zombied out at this point, I recommend it wholeheartedly. Yeah, I liked it. Frank Grillo is pretty solid in it as well. Questions: what's your favorite, absolute favorite Nicolas Cage horror performance? We're going horror performance. It's got to be Mandy, man. Mandy, the meltdown in the bathroom, fucking fantastic. Oh, Shutter Goblin. Would you agree that works of Nigel Neal have and continue to inspire filmmakers? Who counts as today's Nigel Neal? Man, I don't know. I know it inspired Carpenter heavily. And I know that Carpenter inspired everybody heavily that's making movies. So I would say that he definitely did get inspired for that, sure. He's still definitely pushing it forward. I truly hope and pray you get to spend a magical Christmas with all your loved ones. Jingle all the way and plenty of good cheer. Thank you. And also, the episode's going to go Christmas Eve. This will be live. So Merry fucking Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. I hope it's wonderful. I hope it's beautiful. I hope that you get all the little Blu-rays and 4Ks under your tree that you would want. Well, I actually was thinking about doing this in front of the Christmas tree to be festive, but I fucked up. I just remember that just now. So let's do the Patreon pick. We got 5 titles. Last batch was pretty good, man. I enjoyed all of them. I enjoy most movies. I'm so glad that I like most movies. But when I don't like something, I feel like sometimes I could be a little harsh on it. But first up, what do we have here? Tyler Tadeo, Leave Her to Heaven, John M. Stahl. Next up, Art Figueredo, Fool's Parade. Why am I showing it? If you don't believe me, get out of here. Go away. 3 more. Any film of Greg Arnaki's Teen Apocalypse trilogy you haven't covered. Nick Mua. I love that because I just got that Blu-ray set. I've seen Doom Generation, and I've seen Nowhere. I guess we're watching Totally Fucked Up. So that's 3. And then we have Jim Simon, Badlands. Love that movie. Sissy Spacek, Michael Douglas, my boy Warren Oates. And then finally, what do we got here? Tyler Tadeo, Leave Her to Heaven. Apparently I put Leave Her to Heaven in this bag twice. So we're not doing Leave Her to Heaven twice. Last one, maybe he gave it to me twice. Girl Next Door 2007. Did I do this one yet? I feel like I might have done this one. Boy, I cannot remember. Did I do this one? Let's just draw another one just in case I did do that one. I feel like I've seen the movie before, and I don't know if I covered it on the channel yet, to be honest. So we're going to do another one. Tom Brooker, Star Hunter. That's fine. There we go. So we got 6, maybe 5 or 6. And let's get into this rather large update. All right, let's get into this update. First and foremost is looking for Mr. Goodbar. I've only heard that this movie is incredibly weird, huge cult title. Vinegar Syndrome finally got this one. People wanted to release for this movie for years. I don't know much about it, except that I talked about it. People said, man, that's a wild movie. You definitely need to watch it. So I'm looking forward to it. I've heard people talk about it, but I just don't know much about it. 4K here. Look forward to checking that out. Put this away. You're going to have to watch me put all these away because that's just the way I roll. Next up is Blood Tracks, 1985 Scandinavian slasher flick. Kind of The Hills Have Eyes meets a heavy metal band in the snow. It's been a long time since I watched this one. Do remember enjoying it. Seen it a couple times. Yeah, it's finally on Blu-ray. That's a wild movie. It's a cool one. Especially for slasher enthusiast or, survival kind of horror enthusiast. Next up we have 1983's The Keep by Michael Mann, a legendary movie. I don't love this movie, but I've only seen it, not on even an official release. I think I have a beta tape, and I have, bootlegs and stuff like that, whatnot. But yeah, this is The Keep. Finally going to check it out in glorious 4K. What a weird time to be alive. That this movie that no one ever thought was going to get a wide release. Great visually. It's just, I remember the story being an absolute fucking mess. But yeah, you know, the movie was taken away from Michael Mann, and it was a longer version, of course, 3 hours or something like that, and it was cut down. Cut to ribbons. And then we have Silver, another Vinegar Syndrome release here. Now, if I had seen this one or heard about this one, it's been in passing and it's been years. So I don't know all that much about it. Yeah, but, you know, get the yearly package. Another 4K, of course. And, yeah, is this Sharon Stone movie here? I don't know much about it. But I'm looking forward to checking it out eventually. It's kind of the stuff that you get so many movies that in the package, you're like, wow, I don't know that movie. You know, when it comes to horror and exploitation, I do know it. But there's always a couple blind spots. You know, Vinegar Syndrome putting out a lot more mainstream films here. And neither The Sea nor The Sand. I know this had a couple Blu-ray releases. But, yeah. Now I got another one from Vinegar Syndrome. Hey, it's got to be great. It's been released on Blu-ray like 3 times. I know Scream Factory, Shout Factory put it out. And then we got Congo, an absolutely ridiculous, I would call this kind of an exploitation movie, a B movie for sure. If nobody's ever seen Congo, this is a bonkers-ass movie. A great B movie. Amy! There's Amy! Oh, man, I saw this movie in theaters with my actual dad, and it was too damn cold in the theaters. I remember that. Michael Crichton, of course, the success of Jurassic Park, we had to make the Gorilla book into a movie. Great cast. Tim Curry, man. Joe Don Baker's in here. Bruce Campbell, Delroy Lindo, Ernie Hudson, Anna Beasy from Oz. Just a fucking fantastic cast. A lot of fun. Dumber than shit. Taught me that hippos are actually incredibly dangerous and incredibly scary and just incredibly powerful. Before that, I was like, hippos are big and cute and fun. And after that, I was like, hippos aren't that mean, are they? People were like, yeah, they're vicious. And I was just incredibly shocked. So, if anything, Congo taught me to fear the hippo. Next up, we have Who Killed Teddy Bear? Sal Menino from Rebel Without a Cause. I've not seen this one. This is from the label that's Cinematography, or what is it? Cinematography. Whatever it is, I always mispronounce it. But I've been picking these up. I think I've skipped on only one. I've heard that title before. Don't know that much about the film. And then we have Cannibal the Musical by Dagazar. This movie is amazing. A trauma movie, of course. Trey Parker. Shadoinkle. I love this movie. This is a stupid fucking movie, but incredibly clever, incredibly hilarious. The more you watch it, the funnier it gets. What's that line from Beetlejuice? I've seen The Exorcist, 660 times, and it gets funnier every single time I see it. Yeah, that's Cannibal the Musical for you. Love this movie. So stupid, so funny. These guys are geniuses in the most bizarre way, but love it. Then we have the 4K of Terrifier 3. We got a little hologram there. This is a fun movie. Saw it in theaters. Great stuff. Entertaining stuff. The best of the 3, if you ask me, but a lot of people do not like it. That's fine. Ain't your cup of tea then. And then we got Fatal Delusion. This is a Saturn's Core here. We got the Tina Kraus. I love Tina Kraus from Bloodletting and a bunch of other things like that. But I don't know. We don't got no nudity. This is definitely a Wave Productions. I don't know why it's an hour and 4 minutes, but hey, baby, Wave. Next up, we have Dogs in Quicksand, another Saturn's Core here. Looks like a wild, weird movie. Saturn's Core puts out lots of strange things. A lot of it I just pick up on right away. Any Eric Stanze movie. Yeah. Love Eric Stanze, and I love some of the stuff they've been putting out, so gotta grab them. Next up, we have Maybe JT's Love. What is that? Maybe, is that JT? This was Connie, and I like the time. You know, I love Hong Kong cinema, so I immediately grabbed this. Any old, is that any old kind of Hong Kong film I'll grab. Can't even. Maybe It's Love. Jesus Christ, I'm an idiot. Maybe JT's Love. I cannot read that writing. That does not look like It's to me. But this looks kind of more like a drama, but if it's a Hong Kong movie, there's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of sexy time. Next up, we have Blood-A-Rama, Triple Frightmare 2, Love Goddess of Blood Island, Follow That Skirt, and The Undertaker and His Pals. This is an EGFA, of course. Yeah, cool stuff. Probably the best print of Undertaker and his pals, I'm sure. But yeah, very cool. I try to get most of the extra stuff. I don't have it all, but I have a lot of it. Then Red Rooms. Heard great things about Red Rooms. I know that Pure Cinema podcast, Elric Kane was selling this one really hard. I heard good things. I bought it and I was waiting for the Blu-ray to come in. We see you and you are obscene. Okay, so don't know much about it. I think it's a French-Canadian movie, if I'm not mistaken. But definitely one of the last heavy hitters I got to watch for 2024. It's on my list for sure. And then we have, of course, finally, everybody can rest easy knowing that I have Dawn of the Mummy in my hands from Treasured Films on Blu-ray. This is a movie that I've never seen a good release of. I've had like weird shitty releases from UK. I've had bootlegs. I watched it for 81, but now I actually have a Blu-ray of Dawn of the Mummy. Then we have The Hitcher on 4K. This is just a standard release from Second Sight. Great movie. Rutger Hauer. Very good stuff here. Classic kind of thriller horror, road horror movie. Then we have 2 from Jean Roland, Requiem for a Vampire from The Indicator, the 4Ks, man. The 2 young virgins offered to monsters in the Chateau of Orgis. And then last, we have The Escapees from 1981. Good kind of weird circus love story thing from Jean Roland. Also in 4K, somewhere there is a place for them. Yeah, death. I'm sure they fucking die. But yeah, that is the update here. Let's get back to the video. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.